Good. Well, welcome. It's great to see you on the Leadership Lounge podcast. I'm joined here today with Anna Hennell James, former CEO of Orwell Multi Academy Trust, and a good friend of mine. And she's joining us for a series in the Leadership Lounge, short series. And we're looking at our first topic today, which is processing pressure. So, Anna, welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Yeah, it's the Leadership Lounge has been it's been in mothballs for a little while, so we've come out, and it's been good that you're going to join us for 3 sessions, and our first one today on processing pressure. But for our guests, I know you quite well, but for our guests, just tell me a little bit about yourself, your career, and yeah, I've invited you here to be the Leadership Lounge, so clearly you've got some leadership experience, but tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I've spent my entire working life in education. I have just retired. Whoop. So 37 years in education, starting as a class teacher, 2 deputy headships, 2 headships, both of large urban primary schools, and then finally finished being CEO of Orwell Multi Academy Trust, and was part of the group of school leaders who founded that trust as well. So joining it right from the very beginning, until it was time to hang up my chalk.
So you've had leadership at all levels, and actually we've known each other for a number of years, and as we got to know each other, it turned out we used to work in Hertfordshire, literally down the road from each other, and then we both ended up working in Suffolk. So leadership at all levels, but you've just retired from being a CEO of a group of schools. So tell me a little bit about some of the pressures that you can feel being a CEO.
It's very interesting, because I think what I hadn't realised when I stepped away from headship into the CEO role is that the weight of responsibility you feel, not just for one school, and all pupils deserve the very best. So you're trying to support other people in delivering that, but it's no longer directly kind of under your control. That I found quite difficult, because I felt the pressure for our schools to be successful, for the trust to be successful, for staff to have development opportunities, and for children to have the absolute very best education we could give them, all whilst doing it without actually directly doing the do. That was quite hard, and I will also say that trying to lead and manage head teachers is like herding cats.
So if you are a head teacher, as head teachers we are leaders, and so therefore you are trying to lead leaders, and actually anybody that works in that context, and yours was in the context of education, leading head teachers who are used to leading, being in charge, to then do that can be a real challenge. However lovely people they are, you're still trying to lead people who are used to leading. So there's an influencing pressure that you have there. I need to influence them in order to make these changes, because you hold the ultimate responsibility. And those who know a little bit about Academy Trusts, it's you they come to, isn't it? The DFE and others.
It's your name over the door. So ultimately it's your neck on the line if there's an issue or a problem. And as well as the education side of it that the school leaders are delivering, there's the accountability, the finance side, and the trust that people put in us as public sector workers, and it's public money that's being spent, so there's a huge amount of accountability and compliance as well.
So you've all the health and safety and finance stuff that obviously you have a team that work with you on it. It's not that you probably are burning the midnight oil, but you're not burning midnight oil doing all of that. But you're ultimately responsible. So there's a lot of pressure, and our listeners may not necessarily be a CEO, but they will be in roles where there is a sense of pressure. And if you sit down and think through all the things you're ultimately responsible for, and as CEO you're responsible for a lot you've just described there. So how did you manage those pressures? Because if you're thinking about all of those all the time, you could drive yourself a bit nuts with worry. So how did you manage that?
I think I did drive myself nuts with worry to start with, because it was you don't know what you don't know. And when you start a new leadership role, the challenge is people look to you for all the answers. And you don't have them. You'll remember what it's like when you start as a head teacher. You go in, you are suddenly the person in charge. So everybody's asking you all the questions, and you're the person least qualified in that new school to answer them. So I think it's about acknowledging and accepting that, being quite good at blagging it at times, just giving that sense of it's okay because I know what I'm doing, and doing a lot of frantic paddling in the background to get to that stage. But it is about, as you say, you're not on your own, although a lot of businesses are quite small, a lot of multi-academy trusts are very small, so there will be one person like me wearing several hats and having to juggle it. But it is about trying to build that team around you and remembering there are other people you can call on and delegate to. And I think it is quite important to be prepared to say at times, do you know what, I don't know. I don't know what the answer to that is. I don't know how we do this. The first year that we existed, I can remember sitting in a board meeting and one of the trustees talking about, right, we will need to appoint the auditors and deal with that. And I'm sitting there nodding and thinking, oh, that'll be me doing that. And I had no idea how you go about appointing auditors because I'd never had to do it. So you speak to people who've done it. I spoke to other CEOs and said, who do you use? And I have a husband who in a past life was an accountant. So I asked him to give me some questions to ask the audit firms when we were like, I was doing those initial kind of conversations that would make it sound like I knew what I was talking about and I knew what they would be doing so that they, I didn't want them, and I'm sure they wouldn't, but feeling they could pull the wool over my eyes or whatever. I wanted to go in sounding like I know what I'm doing, I understand this process, and we're going to work together. But I was flying by the seat of my pants.
So what I'm hearing from you there is a sense of being authentic. So with some of your team, for example, saying, do you know what, I'm really not sure. Let's work this through together. Let's discover this together. So being authentic is a key part of managing that pressure. You've also talked about tapping into people to gain that expertise. So fellow CEOs, friends, contacts, family members, to glean and get the ideas of information. You've also talked about an element of the opposite of it being authentic, where actually you've picked up enough in order to present certain things.
And you have to present that public image of somebody as a leader who is in control and knows what they're doing, because you have to instill confidence in people. So looking like you're running around like a headless chicken doesn't help, although that's what it might feel like inside. It's having that front that you...
because the people we're leading will be picking up on us, isn't it? And there is a sense where our calmness will generate the calmness. So when you're in those pressurised moments, if we're calm, then everyone else is going, well, if she's calm, it
must be okay.
Should be okay. Whereas if we're going, flip, bum, oh no, it's all going wrong, then they're going to get that sense.
They get that, and that then just feeds itself, doesn't it? And grows and grows until you then are in a situation which is almost like out of your control.
Brilliant. So a really good start for us, Anna, just unpicking a little bit about your experience and how you've managed some of those things, and we're picking up already that balance of being authentic but also our projection of calm, that balance as well of tapping into people for their experience and working collaboratively helps manage those pressures. So we're going to look at, I guess, two main parts in our podcast today. One is how we generally deal with the pressures of what's going on, because in leadership there are regular pressures, and then we're also in the second part going to look at when I call it the oh bum moment. Oh bum, this is all kicking off. There's a high pressure moment and how you deal with it in those high pressure moments. So just looking at it first then, this feeling generally under pressure, I think one of the first things is about getting perspective. So there are some things that we deal with that others would crumble under, and often that's because we've got a different perspective to things. So some people deal with horrendous situations or high pressure, and others just would really crumble. And a lot of that's about perspective. And I think it was Epictetus, the Greek philosopher. I don't know him well, but I've read some of his stuff. He said it's not the thing, it's our view of the thing is what makes a difference. I may have paraphrased it slightly. I don't think a great Greek philosopher would have used the word thing, but it's our perspective of what we're going through is what makes the difference. And some would say it's not, the objective isn't to get rid of the pressure. The objective is to change our relationship with it and see how we manage. So what do you think about that, Anna? Is the picture just right?
It's yes, but easier said than done.
Right.
And I think as well, easier as you become more experienced, because you have that experience to draw upon, and you can reflect on, okay, last time when it seemed like this, once we got to the bottom of it, it wasn't that bad. And one of the roles I had many years ago was the local authority moved me from the school where I was head teacher to a school which had gone into special measures from Ofsted, and needed some new leadership in there.
Yeah, and you do love, I had that experience, and you do sometimes afterwards go, why did I say yes?
But I remember in my first few days, the messaging from everyone was really, quite negative.
Yeah.
So I was having people come to tell me, well, you do realise, and all the staff are going to leave. Okay, and all the children are, behaviour. All the children are really badly behaved.
Yeah, everyone thinks this.
Everyone thinks this. All the parents are really unhappy and going to take. And you have to kind of pause and go, right. All of the staff are leaving, or some of the staff are going to leave, which in some cases might not be a bad thing. Yeah, all the children are really badly behaved, or there's a group of children whose behaviour is causing a lot of issues, and we need to deal with them. All the parents are really unhappy and going to take their children away, or some that we need to meet with and work with. And actually, once you kind of take out other people's emphasis and get your own understanding of the situation, it is right, yes, some staff are going to leave, we're going to need to do some recruitment. There's a group of children that the behaviour system is not working for, and we need to implement something else. And there are some parents who are looking like they're going to, walk away, so we need to have meetings with them. So it's just getting rid of all that noise around it and going, right, what is the actual real issue?
Yeah.
Rather than going, everybody's, what am I going to do? I'm going to have no staff. I'm going to have no children here. There'll be no, the parents are saying, just got to peel it back to what is the reality, and not let other people's perspective overlay what you're looking at.
Yeah, and as I'm hearing this, I'm kind of thinking some stuff we do within coaching, which is you can't stop that initial thought coming in. You can't stop that either initial message from people, or even sometimes ourselves, that feeling that the sky is falling in. So as you were describing, that chicken licking is alive and well. And so you can't stop that initial, but it is about just pressing that pause button, is it, and go, whoa, hang on, let's think about this. Is this, as you said, everyone that is feeling this? And it's the same with our own thinking as well. So the initial thought, the initial information might come in, but it's about then weighing that up and seeking that perspective. Yeah. So you said yes, sort of. So there's a sense then, is there anything then, is it about that we can't stop that whooshing coming in?
I think it takes a lot to not have that initial reaction of, oh no, this is going to be a complete nightmare. And then the trick really is to not get caught up in that, because if everybody else around you is running around and doom, gloom, and the world is going to end, it's very easy to get caught up in that. Yeah. And it's giving yourself that time, and sometimes it can mean taking yourself away, closing the door, again, right, let's just really think about this. And again, if you've got some trusted people, you can pull into your office and go, right, I'm hearing that all the staff are leaving. Do we think that's really true? Can we find out? Can you go and have a chat in the staff room and just see what you think the vibe is that's going on? Because if you jump in feet first to deal with it, right, all the staff are going, oh my goodness, I need to do something. You could be putting time and energy into something that's actually not really a problem. Yeah,
and in one sense you can create the problem. Because if you're going in thinking everyone is in this position. So you then come in with a response that indicates that. Then you may have some people sitting there thinking, well, I was quite happy, but there seems to be this DEFCON 1 response that everyone's unhappy, so maybe I shouldn't be happy. So that just pausing and gaining a perspective that's accurate is really important,
because otherwise you unwittingly fuel the fire. And just create more problems for yourself.
And there was a sense, as you were talking through there, so physiologically, when we're under pressure, our brain, part of our brain, the amygdala or basically sends a signal to release cortisol and adrenaline. And cortisol is the stress hormone. So if our perspective is one where this is a big threat, our brain's saying that, then actually it's telling our body that's how cortisol. So it then creates this loop within ourself where we're releasing the stress hormone, our heart's increasing, your breathing's changing, and our body then is under that stress. And the more we're in that position, actually, the more naturally the body just kicks in to keep releasing this cortisol. So us gaining perspective is important for us as well in managing that physiological response. It's also important because the actions we then take make a difference to the people and help bring the calm and bring the pressure down for everybody else. So how do we reframe perspective then? So you've talked about getting some checks and balances, but how do we reframe that perspective? So I think also it's sometimes where there really is a big pressure. So you talked about sometimes where there's a bit of false information. It's not quite as bad. Chicken Licken's making out that the sky is falling and it isn't. But sometimes the sky is pretty close to falling in. And how we deal with that pressure, again, can be about the perspective we take. So have you got experience about how you have reframed that in your thinking? Because if we think, oh my goodness, this is a DEFCON 1, it's huge, it's massive, we're close to collapse, that creates pressure in our own thinking, and therefore our perspective is one, this is a big make or break fail moment. People that seem to manage these perspectives put it more in, well, here's an experience, here's something I can learn from. To borrow another phrase from another podcast, I just need to do the best I can with all that I have in this moment I'm in. And having that kind of mindset can reframe this as being okay. It's the equivalent to the person shooting a goal in a penalty. You're just shooting a ball in quite a big 20 odd foot by 7 foot area with one 6 foot 2-ish man standing in the middle.
Or woman.
Or woman, yes. So you can be shooting a goal. This is just shooting a goal. But if it's a penalty and it's in a final and it then puts more pressure. So it's about reframing. I'm just kicking a ball at a 20 foot by 7 foot space. So how do we do the equivalent to that in leadership?
I think it's when you whatever it is, and we've all had some of those moments where it is, the sky is about to fall in and I have got to do something now. There may be similar things you've dealt with, or times that there have been elements of that you've dealt with. So it's like telling yourself, I've dealt with stuff before, I can do this.
Yeah, brilliant.
Just giving yourself that moment, just give yourself a bit of a boost, I can do this.
Yeah.
All hell might be breaking loose out there.
Yeah.
But I'm going to put my big girl pants on, walk out there, as I've done many times before, and get on with it.
Yeah.
So I think that helps in reminding yourself of that.
And that, if I may pick up on that one, that's a really good one, because Steve Peters, in his work Chimp Paradox and Path Through the Jungle, he talks about our emotional centre is like an agitated chimp, and he says there are some key things that help calm the chimp. And the first is to acknowledge the emotional feeling. I am feeling worried. And the second one is exactly what you've just said. Remind yourself of times when it's been okay. Remind yourself of actually what I can do that's very similar to this. So I'm hearing you talk that, and I was thinking, that reminds me of the time I had to tell staff that actually one of their colleagues had passed away the night before. And of course, in your head, you're going, if I get this wrong, this could really upset people. How will they see me? How will they see the situation? And there is, in that moment, it's just like, no, I can give difficult news to people sensitively. I've taken funerals before. I've already, unfortunately, had that experience of having to share that with staff teams. So reminding yourself in that moment, and then you go, I can do this. And anything else that you think helps us regain that perspective?
As well, it's that thing about acknowledging that nobody sets out deliberately to make the wrong decisions in times of crisis, that you inside you will always do your best, and therefore whatever decision you make will be the right one, because if you could make a different one you would have done. So when you look back at it, you'll hold on to, if there had been an alternative course of action, whatever, I would have done it because I was trying to find the best way through for the organisation, for the team, whatever. So not get caught up on worrying of should I do this, should I, just make a decision. Because you've got the information, you've got, hopefully you've got some experience. Just get on and make a decision so you can start dealing with something, rather than beating yourself up. Because if there was an obvious solution, you would find it and see it. Particularly if you've got a team around you and you do some sharing. So it is just to kind of like try and not box it off, but just go, right, this is, what at this moment in time appears to be the best thing to do, therefore that's what we're going to do. Right, now let's start planning that and do it.
And you've got some really key themes that you've dropped some bits in there. So it's about taking time to just glean some key bits of information, so the decision you're making in that moment is informed. You've talked about working collaboratively with those around you as well. I think that's really key, because it reassures you, but it also means if you've missed a perspective, they bring it in. And then it is that moment, just as you've described, that key element of just saying, right, I've got all that I can glean at this moment, and I'm making a decision based on what I have to my hand. Of course, we always know hindsight is the phrase, is a wonderful thing. And much later on, we could look back and see things that we couldn't see at the time. But in this moment, I have all I have. I'm working collaboratively with my team, and so I'm making the best decision in this moment. So it links again to that phrase from the other podcast: do the best that I can with all that I have in this moment that I'm in. And just reminding yourself of that is really key, isn't it? Those things are really helpful. I remember reading recently Stephen Bartlett's Diary of a CEO book, which is a really good book, actually. I'm still astounded for such a young man how much wisdom he's already got in a book. But one of the things he talks in there about dealing with pressure, he said, pressure is a privilege. It only comes to those who've earned it. In other words, due to the position we're in, e.g. in your case, CEO, when you've got to that position as CEO, you are in the moments of pressure and making decisions because of the position you've got to as CEO. I wonder, does looking at pressure in this way help? Have you ever done that? Wherever in those moments of pressure, did you go, oh, well, it's all my fault. If I wasn't a CEO, I wouldn't have to make this pressure. But this is a privilege. Ever look at it like that?
I don't think I can say I've ever looked at it as a privilege. I think I have acknowledged at times this comes with the job. It comes with the territory, and I've chosen to take on the role of CEO, and therefore this is part of what I can expect. Calling that a privilege? I don't think I'd go quite that far, but I understand where he's coming from. And I think if you can hold on to that and accept this is part of my job to be dealing with this, because that's, to put it crudely, that's what I'm being paid for.
It comes with the territory.
It comes with the territory, and therefore I need to get on and deal with it. That can help kind of like park the pressure a little bit. Okay, I've just got to deal with it. I know when we, within the trust, we were hugely privileged to open a brand new school. That brought a lot of pressure because it was post-COVID, post-Brexit, so building supplies were in, short supply, delays on everything. I mean, I cannot take credit for the building being open on time. That was down to RG Carters, who were amazing, and that whole team were brilliant. But I felt a lot of pressure. It's down to me. This school has got to open on time. It's got to have staff in it. We've got to get parents to sign their children up to a school when we don't even have a building to show them yet.
So
and
this
things
nice
like
field, would you like to send your children here?
Yeah, send your children here. And in those moments, it was about thinking about, okay, Suffolk County Council and the Regional Schools Commissioner's Office didn't just go, oh, do you know what, Matt, you can have this one. There's a lengthy application process. We'd put huge amounts of time and energy into writing. I think the final application was something like 63 pages of detailed information. And then when we got shortlisted, there was all the time and preparation for a fairly intensive interview that we had to go through. So actually it's about reminding us, do you know what, they picked us, so they must have confidence in us, because it's a lot of money, and that basically Suffolk County Council needed those school places, so they needed it to happen. So if they picked us and had confidence in us, maybe we just need to have a bit of confidence in ourselves that we will pull it off. And we did.
Yeah. So there is that sense in that moment, isn't it, that I have this opportunity because of the position I'm in, and therefore because I have this opportunity, it comes with pressures. It comes with joys as well.
Yes,
it comes with
absolutely, but pressures as well.
So Stephen Bartlett is sort of right, but we don't necessarily think about it in that moment. It's only afterwards we can look back and go, there is that. But maybe that's part of helping us to manage the pressure in the moment, to say, this comes alongside the joys. It is the pressure that comes with the role, and therefore, because we've reached that stage, that comes with it. So pressure, just again, a lot of reading that I've done around this, as well as in various roles managing it. Pressure comes both internal and external. So internal being the pressure that we put ourselves under, either that we've put ourselves in that position, or that we are telling ourselves in our own thinking. And then external is the pressure that's exerted by somebody else or by a situation. Do you have experiences of the internal and the external? Any stories with that one? How you dealt with it?
Absolutely. I think internally, I would love to tell you about my children's birthday cakes.
Your children's birthday cakes.
So I have 3 children. I've always worked full time, even when they were little. And one of the things that I had a big thing about was, I might be a working parent, but my children are going to have a homemade birthday cake, and not just, a couple of bits of sponge and a bit of icing and sprinkles. They are going to have, we had a book of, children's party cakes, and it was a big bit in the build up to their birthday. It'd be a big thing. We'd open the book, they'd go through and choose what they might want. So in my time, I have made pirate islands, Noah's Arks, a stable complete with horses prancing in the meadow, a 3D stand-up Dalek, and I would be up to 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning the night before the party, making and finishing these cakes. But it was like my children are going to have these cakes. And it got to the stage where one year, one of them said, "Can I not just have a caterpillar from Tesco's like everybody else?" And I was like, no, I am making you these cakes. And actually that was like, okay, who am I making these cakes for? Why am I doing it when actually the kids would be perfectly happy with something from, Tesco's or Sainsbury's or Asda or whatever. And I think I was just putting that pressure on myself, because it was clearly kind of unsaid guilt about being a working parent and working full-time, very long hours, and maybe not having as much time to spend with them at moments as I would have liked. So it's almost like this, if I can knock out these amazing cakes, then clearly, number one, I'm a good parent, and number two, I'm putting lots of time in. So you've got there both the internal pressure that you put yourself under, e.g. you started this thing from when they were younger, and they're now they're in their 20s. One is 30.
Right, so for the last 30 years, you've been making a myriad of cakes. You put yourself not only the pressure of I'm going to make a cake, but you even got them to select, so you couldn't even switch what the cake was going to be halfway through when it wasn't perhaps
working well.
It had to be the Dalek, or it had to be the prancing horses. But you've also then talked about, actually there's that internal monologue or storyline that you put yourself under. And although you've given the example there of something family related and cake related, we do the same to ourselves within leadership. We're telling ourselves the kind of leader I have to be in this moment, or the kind of constant pressure I put myself under. I must look this way, I must always act this way. And that in itself creates its own pressure and own storyline, and then it becomes a pass-fail moment, depending on that, which again is not helpful. External pressure?
Plenty of those in education.
Yeah.
Ofsted, for one. Huge pressure on school leaders around getting a good outcome. I don't think Ofsted is fit for purpose. I don't think it necessarily improves children's experiences. There would be, when schools are really struggling, then yes, but generally day to day, no. It just means people go around and produce a lot of paperwork and do a lot of things unnecessarily, and also things like finance. School budgets are really tight. That will be true across businesses. And I think with things like that, managing that pressure is looking at it and going, right, so for example, with Ofsted, do I have to deal with it? Yes, as I work in the maintain sector, I'm going to have to deal with Ofsted. Do I have to run my life in terms of getting ready to deal with Ofsted? No, I don't. Do I have to have the staff all hyped up? Ofsted might be coming Ofsted. No. It's these days it's a phone call the day before. It's a 2-day experience. We do our best. We want to show ourselves off to our best. We take their comments. We may feel they're helpful or otherwise, and we move on. Same with the finance. Can I control decisions that DfE make around funding for schools? No, because I can't be in the room when they're arguing with the Treasury about how much money schools are going to get. So I can't do anything about that. Can I make sure that we have controls in place with our finances? Can I make sure that we seek best value? Can I make sure that we are, doing the best with what we've got? Yes, I can. So I can deal with that bit and get on with that. Can I put, is it worth putting lots of time and energy into, we will have a bit of a rant about the DfE and funding, but is it worth expending lots of time and energy on it? No, because it's not going to change anything. We can't personally, individually change it. We can take part in campaigns, and I would always support that. But is it worth me as an individual leader getting really stressed up about? No, because it won't change it. And yes, we have to cut our cloth accordingly. And yes, that might mean we have to make difficult decisions. But we're making those difficult decisions because of external factors which are outside of our control.
So what I'm hearing from there is getting perspective when letting external pressure, holding it in balance with other bits within your life, and also holding it in balance with how you want to lead and who you want to be in that moment. And then I'm also hearing this sense of control what you can control. And put your energy into where your energy is best spent, and firing it off and ranting at government process and all the rest of it when isn't necessarily going to change it. The bulk of your energy needs to go into the things where you can make that difference, and that helps you manage that external pressure. So that's really good. Thank you, Anna. So just drawing this part together around how we generally manage pressures, I've kind of and worked through in coaching with people kind of 6 S's that often help people kind of soothe the pressure and manage that pressure. And the first is seeing it, and just seeing it and naming it is the first thing, what your pressure is. Then soothe it. So we touched a bit on that in some of your work with the kind of the chimp paradox there, just kind of acknowledging your emotions, reminding yourself of the time it's been okay. You brought that one out. There's also an added part to that, which is boxing the chimp in other words, saying, okay, what are you actually worried about? Let's play it forward. That's what's called pre-morteming. If this really goes to death, what will it look like? And just seeing, is it going to be as bad as you think it is? And if it is, how will you manage it? Share it. We've touched on that already, actually, with some of the things you've mentioned. Connecting with team, friends, family, so that you're not alone on it, because that allows you to not feel alone, but it also allows you to gain perspective. And the next one is seize it, which is all about the locus of control. We just talked about that one. What's in my control, what's not, and focusing in on that. And then sign up to it. And by that I mean, which bit about all of this really matters to you, and therefore it gives you energy. So you talked about that in terms of the children. Actually, I want the best for the children. So this is what's going to give me the energy to manage this pressure, because I know the purpose of why I'm doing it. And the last one is synergize. So you've already got some adrenaline and cortisol going in your body because it's pressure. Well, actually, some of that will also mirror when you're in exciting moments. So you can use that adrenaline and that cortisol because you'll get like a beating heart going faster because of the cortisol. Well, that also mirrors when you're really excited about something. So it's about kind of synergizing with that energy and kind of working it through. So we've touched on a number of these, but just to run through it again, see it, name your pressure. Have you ever done that, or is that what you've done? Or
yeah, I think when things get very intense, and in schools there is a lot of pressure around, data outcomes, and it's what we want children to achieve the best they can do, but then when you start publishing it in league tables and ranking schools, that's less than helpful. You can get really caught up in that, and when it gets to the stage where you can feel yourself just almost like obsessing over, Ofsted, what's Ofsted going to look for? What they're going to want? What should we be saying? It is that thing you have to go, actually, this is ridiculous.
Yeah, I'm obsessing.
I am obsessing over this. We need to stop. And almost like give yourself a good, talking to, and go, right, just stop this. When Ofsted come in, as a leader, that every day that school runs well, it provides the children with a good education. Nothing will be perfect. There'll always be a lesson that doesn't go as well as you hope. There'll be a child that has a bit of a moment. There'll be a member of staff that's not having a good day. That's real life. Yeah. You cannot expect to put on some show for Ofsted where everything is absolutely perfect. So actually, let's just let that go from the outset. We do what we can, and actually our core purpose is providing high quality of education for the children. And as long as I'm, as a leader, confident that that's what we're doing, then Ofsted come in, have a look. You might not agree with me, and we might have some discussion around that. But I can sleep easy at night if I know that the vast majority of time what happens in the school I'm leading or the business I'm running, when it becomes a trust that is a bit more business-like, that we're doing our best. We're doing the best we can with what we've got available to us. Yeah,
absolutely. So there is a sense of just naming, I'm obsessing, but then also you've talked there about reminding yourself of your core purpose, the thing you're passionate about, and try and bring yourself back to that in that moment. Which links nicely, I think, into the soothing as the second one, because there is a sense where we've acknowledged that emotion, remind ourselves of time as, okay, what you're doing there is, like you say, you're giving yourself a talking to, reminding yourself of what I'm really here for and what I want the focus to be, and then possibly playing it forward to box the chimp in, to do that pre-mortem and say, okay, so if it goes wrong, what will happen? And how bad will it be? Okay, and is there anything I can then do to reduce that chance of happening? What could I do to
preempt
reduce it?
Things?
So have you ever found yourself doing that, managing that?
I have.
Pre-mortem and preempting?
I think there have been lots of occasions where I have projected forward and thought, right, what's, if it is as bad as that, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? Fundamentally, probably, I'll get sacked. Not great, but it happens, and there'll be something else. Is anybody going to die? No. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting you talking about that one. I think as well, when you project that forward and you go, well, how bad will that be? Well, I'll be very sad. I'll have lost my job and all the other bits, and I can speak from experience. You are sad, and it is very difficult. But I think you also can remind yourself of people then, okay, so do I know anyone that's been through that? And how did it go for them? And are they okay now? And actually, in many cases, our worst scenario isn't as bad as we think. Obviously, sometimes there are those moments for people, but in many cases, it isn't. And in some cases, people end up in a better scenario. And so remind yourself, that person went through that. And so I can do the same. So in some ways, even if you don't have a personal experience of what the worst could look like, you might know of others, and it's reminding yourself of those moments. And I think once you've accepted that, okay, if this does all go absolutely, I could well lose my job. It's easier then to go, right, and if that happens, we'll have to deal with it. But that's the worst case scenario. So actually, let's start moving forward with it.
And I think in those moments, again with my coachees, I often say, okay, so who do you want to be?
Yeah.
In those moments, if that were to happen, who do you want to be? What's the story you want to write in that moment? And certainly from my experience, that was one of my mantras. Okay, what story do I want to write? And then you go, well, if that happens, this is the kind of person I want to be. Well, then if it happens, you could be that person, couldn't you? So all that, I think, just helps you to soothe and generally reduce the pressures. Sharing it, connecting in with team and family, you've touched on that number of things that you've said already, isn't it? I certainly, you know, from my experience, just sharing that with confidants. I talk to people about having guardians and guardrails in the coaching, and your guardian are the people that are around you that you know will help keep you in a good place, and just identifying who those people would be in those moments. If you're under pressure, who are my guardians? Who will call it straight with me, but will also help me? So have you got experience of those guardians and?
I think it's so important to have that network of people who understand the role you're in, because they will have that perspective when you lose yours.
Yes.
And I can remember a conversation we had in a stairwell in a hotel. That might it's not as dodgy as it sounds. We were at a conference. And you just reminded me that I was more than my job.
Yes.
That you know,
you were Anna the wife, Anna the mother, Anna the daughter, all those things.
All those things,
not
just Anna the head teacher. And it's having people like that you can turn to because there are tough times. And it's easy to look back now and talk about things with a positive slant, but when you are living it, it is incredibly difficult, and with the layers of pressure that build up and up and up, you can get to the point where you can't see the wood for the trees, and you need people like those guardians to go, you're more than this. This is one part of your life. You have much more to your life than that, and yes, this bit at the moment is hard, but let's look at the other bits that are still going well and very positive.
So I think finding people within your own organisation, like you've just said there, finding colleagues in similar roles because they can help you gain that perspective. We one of the reasons we got to know each other really well is we had our triad, wasn't it? It was me, you and Sean initially, and then the triad became 4, became 5. So we ran out of what we still called ourselves the triad, I think, even though we weren't 3. So people like that to find their perspective, I would say, celebrating the job I do now as a coach. I think coach is critical for people if you're finding you're generally under pressure. Is that I think come up for air?
One of the, I think the most positive things I was able to do as CEO within the trust is to make coaching available to trust leaders, to school leaders, and the. For those who chose to engage, because it's not for everybody, but for those who chose to engage with that, the difference it made to them, was phenomenal. And even when the budget was really tight, one of the first things we would make sure we'd allowed for was for that coaching to still be available for people.
Yeah, so it's really key, isn't it? Different ways that we can share the general pressure amongst that coaching being one of them. So we've covered some of the others already, haven't we, in terms of seizing it, where's my control, where can't I control, so that's really key. And then just really tapping into what matters, I think, in seizing and signing up to what matters can be really key. So those are general pressures. We're now going to move on just to thinking about those moments of pressure that come, those high pressure. And I can think of colleagues, ex-head teacher colleagues we've had. So I always remember Jackie talking about a parent coming on site during an offset with a
snake,
giant snake,
big
a massive snake, and having to deal with that. We interviewed in the leadership lounge before a head teacher called Vicky, and she was describing how she'd had warning that someone was going to come and drive by and shoot at the children. Just some horrendous moments of pressure. It's suddenly in that moment you've got to deal with it. What about you? Have you had those kicking off moments of pressures? Any particular note that you're able to share with us?
Yeah, I mean, one that I don't think I will ever forget was an Ofsted inspection at one of the schools where I was head teacher.
Yeah.
A major safeguarding thing had come to light. A child had made a disclosure, had made the disclosure publicly to other children and their parents beforehand, one of whom had very kindly reported it to the press. So there I am with a lead inspector wanting to, talk to me about the inspection. I've got this child who's made this really, really significantly serious disclosure that we're trying to deal with social services, and I've got the local press on the phone.
Yes.
And I can remember at one point just trying to find somewhere quiet to try and get through to social services, and ended up hiding myself in the stock cupboard so the inspector didn't know where I was and couldn't talk to me. I'm trying to deal with social services, and saying to the office staff, the press keep phone, I said, tell them I'm taking assembly and can't be disturbed. Well, that must have been the longest assembly ever, because they kept phoning, and the lovely office lady was going, she's still doing assembly. But just that panicking of trying to juggle all these things. And front and centre of that, a child who's potentially at significant risk of harm. To get that bit properly sorted.
I just, you were talking there that, you've got 3 pressures coming at once, haven't you? I just reflected myself on what are some of the moments of pressure in my previous role as head teacher. So we had one where police were chasing a drug dealer who broke through into a garden next to the school site and was literally halfway through the fence as the dog handler and the dog grabbed this drugs person and pulled him back through, but the police weren't sure whether he'd thrown his stash onto the school site. So we had to make a decision in the moment. And it was just about to be lunchtime as well. What do we do, and how we manage that to ensure the children were safe. I remember one where a parent decided to come onto school site at the end of the day carrying his gun case, because he'd gone to the shooting range and thought it would be a good idea to come and collect his child with his gun case. And obviously a number of parents coming running to me to tell me there was a man with a gun on site, and how we followed that one up and worked with the man to maybe help him understand that probably wasn't his brightest of moments. And then we had a bomb scare. Which,
we did.
So my school had a bomb scare. I was at that point 3 hours away at a funeral, and how we managed that, and remember tapping into local contacts, which was you to help me at the time.
Yes, I remember getting a message going, there's a bomb threat at my school and I'm not here, can you go down?
Could you help me, please, because you'll get there quicker than I will.
You go down there, and I knew that the children, your evacuation plan, the children would all be going up the road to Sean, who you'd also tapped into. But that was interesting, because I was not quite sure what I was. I just dropped everything and jumped in my car and off I went. But I wasn't quite sure what I was going to. And whilst rationally you can think the chances of this being genuine are very, very low. But you just don't know. And I can remember driving there thinking, what do I do if it actually blows up? And are the police going to be there? And then your poor staff who'd brilliantly evacuated the building, but office staff and site staff there, and them being told by the police, well, you need to go in and search the building. And them saying to me, do we have to go in and do that? And I'm like, well, I wouldn't fancy doing it, but I guess we need to know. But how do we weigh this up and all of that? And also that kind of added pressure of not wanting to let you down, knowing you must be going through all sorts of pressure yourself, knowing that your school's got a bomb threat and you're 3 hours away. So fundamentally you can't really do anything.
And I think at the time the deputy was off sick. And it was one of the assistant heads, Sarah, that was dealing with it. So what we're not saying here is the best way to deal with pressure is to phone a friend and send her to go and deal with the pressure. Actually, there are some important ones even in that story. So I wonder whether it's worth us just thinking through. I have, again, when I'm working with clients, we use this as a bit of a structure, kind of 5 Ps for processing those instant moments of pressure. And the first one is pause. Just pause, take a moment to ground yourself. There's a practical thing there, it's about reducing the cortisol. If we're thinking about these moments like man with a gun case, if it was Jackie, dealing with the man with a snake, and the experiences that you've had, have you used pause?
Yes, because I know from past experience, early on as a leader, that it's very easy to be reactive.
Yeah.
And then sometimes you haven't got all the facts.
Yeah.
You've got misinformation, and you haven't given yourself that chance to go, right, what can I gather to support me? You've just gone, oh, I've got to do something, boom, I've done it. Doesn't necessarily go as well as if you're just like, right, let's just take a breath. It's like, just take a breath moment, think about this. Because I can remember when I got the message from you, I was literally like, yelling out to my office lady, I've got to go. There's this incident. Yeah. Grabbing my stuff and thinking, right, what else might I need? Yes. Let's go and get a high-vis jacket.
Yeah.
High-vis jacket might be useful.
Yeah.
Oh, whistle, rummage it, find my whistle. I don't know what I thought I was going to do with a whistle. It might be useful.
That's what the police used in the old days, just blow a whistle.
So it is just that pause to give yourself a moment. And it just can be a little bit calm. It won't make the pressure any less, but I think it just makes you feel better able to deal with it.
And you're right. You kind of used the word there. You're grounding yourself. And again, if you look at physiologically what's happening in that moment of high pressure, the brain will say this is a fight, flight, flee moment, freeze moment. And so you're working in your amygdala, and that moment of pause just allows the frontal lobe to catch up. It's just you're grounding yourself in the moment, and then, as you said, it then allowed you in that moment to think, what do I need? High-vis jacket, whistle, who knows? But it just allowed you to think more clearly. So that pause is key. Then the next one is to ponder, which is just taking that moment to think about the issue and to coach yourself. So, when starting off and coaching, the acronym GROW is really useful. What's the goal? What's the outcome I want here? What's the current reality for R? O for options. What's open to me here, and which is W, which is the best way forward? And just taking that moment. Now, in really high pressure moments, you haven't got a lot of time, but you can still give yourself 30 seconds even in the most high pressure moments, just to go, right, okay, what do I need? What do I need to do in this high pressure moment? And so if I think about that one with the drug dealer coming onto the edge of the school site, and then he might have thrown his stash, it's just saying, well, what's my goal? My goal is I want the children to be safe. What's the reality? Well, he can only have thrown it within this radius. What are my options? Well, I could fence this off. I could get people to, some key stuff to glean. I could make sure children aren't coming into this region. And so which is the best way forward? Well, actually, we did all of it. But it allowed, even in that fleeting moment, and you needed to respond quite quickly because there were about to be 600 children coming out for playtime. So in that moment, just taking that moment to ponder. Again, do you find that just being able to think through?
Yes, it's almost like that. Just breathe, isn't it? Just breathe and think. As you said, what's the priority here? So I know when I had this, situation juggling Ofsted, safeguarding, press and whatever, what's the most important thing? The child. Yeah. So let's, Mr. Ofsted Inspector, I'm sorry, you're going to have to wait, mate. I'm dealing with the safeguarding thing. You're going to have to wait. I need to get hold of somebody at social care. So that is my priority. Everything else, the teachers can be in their classrooms teaching. They know what they don't need to worry about that. They'll be a bit twitchy because Ofsted are in and whatever, but let's just focus on the key thing that I need to sort, and that's to make sure that child is safe fundamentally. And get that sorted. And whether this major disclosure is actually as serious as we think, or a bit of misinterpretation and misunderstanding, and all those sorts of things. But you have to start from the premise that it is what it is, but work out what the most important thing is and start dealing with that rather than trying to, do 6 things at once. Pick the one and deal with that, and then move on to the others.
And it's just that moment to ponder and think about it allows you a chance to do that. So the third one is to partner, and obviously the example we talked about there with the bomb scare is a prime example. Who can support me in this moment? And that's both in it, when you're in it, and who are my colleagues around me, and who's best placed to do what, but also wider and outside. And it's also thinking about what skills do I need in this moment, who's best suited to help me in this moment because of the skills, and then gather them and get that input and making sure of that. So that bomb scare example. Sarah had phoned me and said, "Oh, I've had this. I'm intending to do this, but I'm letting you know." And she also wanted a bit of support and advice. And so I was able to say, yes, go and do that. Let's get them out, everybody out first. I was then obviously hours and hours away, but I was able to say, right, I will contact Sean, because that's where we're going to be sending the children to his school up the road. And I also then said, and I will contact Anna. I'll make sure you've got support that can get to you soon. So in that scenario, it was thinking, who do I know that's best placed? I need someone with experience like yourself to be there and support Sarah. I need to alert Sean so that I can support Sarah by making sure that Sean is then ready to receive, and one less job for her to worry about. But it's also then within the system. So also if you're preparing for high pressure moments, so like as schools, we would have those critical incident plans. And in this case, fortunately, literally only within 2 weeks before, we'd done a dry run, not necessarily taking them right up to school, but there's listed on there in these pressure moments who's dealing with what, which helps. But it is, isn't it, about thinking about who in this moment do I call upon?
Who can help me?
Yeah.
And that can be hard, because in the heat of the moment, you can think, I've got to deal with all this myself. And that's when I think there's a danger that you make decisions, and if that's not communicated to people with what's going on, then people don't know what's going on, and then they get more stressed and panicky because they don't know what's going on. It is that communication and saying, like, so you were able to say to Sarah, I will speak to Sean, I will get Anna to come and give you some support if you need it, and she can, stay at the school while you're leading the children away, so you don't need to worry about what's happening back at school. That kind of communication and reassurance is really important for people, but there is a danger that in the heat of the moment you forget that and you go, oh, I've got to do everything.
Yeah. And sharing the loads, and also shares the pressure, doesn't it? Which is key.
Yeah.
So our fourth one is present, and by that there's a great phrase which is I intend to, and it comes from the book Turn the Ship Around by Stephen Marquette. And he was saying, if you're about to do something, if you say the words I intend to do X, that not only are you hearing it, so it gives you the second chance to make sure that what you're about to do is going to be the right thing, but also in your sharing it with others allows them to hear it and also feed back to you if what you're about to do is going to make it go really wrong, and you get a chance for checking here are those errors. So if I think back to many of mine, there were moments where I would say, so I can think about really the challenging one I mentioned earlier about telling people about a colleague that passed away, and I had thought things through, and I met with my senior leadership team, and I said to them, okay, we've got this, and I'm aware of people's day and all the rest of it, and I want to care for them, so I think I intend to tell them at the end of the day. And that allowed my SLT to say, actually, I think that's a mistake, Colin. I think you need to tell them now, because if they hear later on and you knew it earlier, they might feel that they hadn't been shared openly and honestly, and we can still provide them with some support mechanism to give them time to grieve in that moment. I think they will. Having something to carry on with during the day as well will also help them. And so by doing that, allowed them to give me feedback, and I followed their feedback, and we did it first thing in the day, and actually it was the right decision. So I can see moments where using that, presenting it to others, what you intend to do, is really helpful. What's your thought and experience on that?
I think that's really key, and like you, I've been in the position of having to deliver really, really bad news to a staff team. We had an occasion when one of the children at the school had died in a fire, and it was we found out on the day before, the staff were all in, it was one of our training days, and the day before the children came in, and having to think about, number one, telling the staff, and then how do you tell a class of 10-year-olds
they're not going to see their friend
they're not going to see their friend again. And so that was really important to go through that, and to be acknowledging the emotions of the staff at the time, but also to be prepping for the children. And again, I went through that process. So I intend, we will get support in from the local authority psychology service provided support for staff, and we know we can sort of got them lined up to be in school for any children that want to talk to them. I think it's really important that the child's class, we talk to them individually at the start of the day, bring them in at registration, have that conversation with them, then get the rest of the school in the hall and tell them together, so everybody's knowing at roughly the same, because what you don't want is children hearing it from another child. So planning all of that out, and then sitting down with the class teacher, who was very clear she wanted to be the one telling her class, but helping her rehearse those phrases. And one of the phrases that we kind of landed on that was useful for telling the class, and then the whole school and assembly, was to say to the children that sometimes things happen that we just can't explain, explain why, rather than trying to almost like come up with reasons that weren't legitimate, but just agreeing that's the phrase we're going to use for the children. Sometimes things happen that are just beyond what we can explain to.
I love that, Anna, because that leads, obviously I don't love the situation, it's really hard and tough, but the example you've given there that leads nicely into the last one, which is just to put it into practice. So to practice it, to put it into practice. And you've talked there about some really key things about clear explanations as well, and expectations on people. So you've really worked out, this is what we're going to deliver and these are the phrases we're going to use, and you just put it into action. You mentioned earlier on that sometimes you give it that thinking, and now I've just got to do it. I've just got to put it into. And so when you've worked through those first batch of 4, now I've just got to put it into practice. So that's a great example. And Anna, it's been great meeting with you and working with you. We've talked through lots of things, how to deal with pressure generally, but also in these moments of intense pressure, these 5 key P's of pause, ponder, partner, present, and practice it. And we're now kind of coming to our end. So we always end our podcast with our kind of top tips, the kind of up to 3 things that we think we would want our listeners and watchers to kind of take from today. So top tips from you. What are your top tips? I
do have 3.
Yeah, good. What are your 3 then?
Number 1 comes back to that perspective, and I don't mean to make light of things, but I think that bottom line is anybody going to die? Is anybody in immediate danger? If the answer to that is no, let's just calm down a bit. Let's just get some perspective, think about it. Let's not go into chicken licking moment. Number 2, delegate. It's not unheard of, but it would be unusual that you would be dealing with a real crisis situation completely on your own. There will be somebody you can, phone your mate and ask her to go and do it. You can, you'll have people in your team around you, and you have to trust that people will step up when it's needed. And if you've built the right team, and if you have given your team belief in themselves, and if you have previously trusted them to do what you've asked them to, they will step up, and you will have people that can help out. And number 3 is be kind to yourself. You can only do what you can do, and I take great heart really from decisions I've had to make in knowing that at the time I made the best decision I could, because if there was a different decision I could have made, I would have done it. But based on what's in front of me, what's available to me, I've made the best decision. And if I've made that decision based on wanting to do the best for the child, the organisation, the situation, then actually I can sleep easy at night. Yeah,
that's brilliant. I think those are 3 great top tips, Anna, which hopefully our listeners and our viewers will be taking those away with us. So thank you. I mean, for me, that reiterates some of the key things. And I think for me, again, the key thing of just, if you can in that moment, just pause, because we can often think we need to rush straight into it, and just that moment of pause allows you to help get that perspective, which is what you've talked about as one of your key ones there. It's that moment of pause that then allows you to gain that perspective, which then reduces the pressure to allow you to manage it more in line with your skills. And I totally agree with you about partnering with others as well. I think that's really important. And I just love that one you said at the end, just being kind to yourself, because in these moments of pressure, none of us goes into it thinking, do you know what, I want to make a really bad decision here. We go into it going, I just want to make the best decision I can. And at that moment, as long as you've taken the moment to pause and just kind of ponder and process what is available to you, then you will have made the best decision in that moment. So to actually be kind to yourself afterwards, when all that hindsight, all the what ifs come into your mind afterwards, of course, if we've got all that moment to think, and almost like the movies where everything freezes, doesn't it? And the hero gets a chance to really look and understand. Of course, afterwards, there's lots of other things that might have been possible. But in that moment, if we're taking that moment to pause and just think, we are going to have made the best decision that we could have done in that moment, and to then be kind to yourself. So brilliant. Anna, thank you for joining us in our session today. It's been brilliant. Just to think about how we process pressure. We're going to meet again next month for our next topic. And so thank you to listeners and to those who've been watching on YouTube for joining us in the Leadership Lounge podcast. We look forward to seeing you again next month for our next topic. Thank you for joining us.